But you were staying at the house of
Yes.
a convicted sex offender.
It was a convenient place to stay. I've gone through this in my mind so many times. At the end of the day, with the benefit of all the hindsight that one could have, it was definitely the wrong thing to do.
You probably don't need a reminder. That was the moment Prince Andrew's life in the public eye came to a crashing, humiliating end. That interview with Emily in 2019 was described as the worst PR crisis for the royal family since the death of Princess Diana. The aftermath seemed to cement the public's perception of Andrew as boorish, a bore, arrogant, out of touch and lacking in judgment. Well, there's a new book out by the historian Andrew Lownie, which puts, frankly, rocket boosters on all of that. Whatever your impression was before, it will be 10 times more having read this book. It's entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. And I sat down with him recently about some of the remarkable, jaw-dropping stories he's uncovered in his research to uncover the real Prince Andrew. Well, we're joined now by Andrew Lownie. I've read the book and I am struck by the efforts you went to and the detail you got on the finances, where some of the money was coming from, some of the dodgy dealing that you uncovered, but also how much you failed to uncover. Why couldn't you get to the truth of it?
Well, I agree. This is the tip of the iceberg. And I've only uncovered things that were perhaps reported in the press or were legal cases where things emerged, or legal depositions. I mean, if we hadn't had Virginia Giuffre, quite a lot of the stuff wouldn't have happened. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there have been obstacles from the beginning and there continue to be obstacles. So one of the most important things, which I've been working on for 4 years now, is to get access to the archives and the files of Andrew as Special Trade Envoy between 2001 and 2011. And these files should actually, some of them, be in the National Archives anyway. But there's a very strong public interest here. He was paid for by the taxpayer. And there are suspicions, and indeed I found, that he was taking people with him who he shouldn't be taking. His 2 daughters, Epstein, David and Jonathan Rowlands, who are his business partners, and others. And this, of course, has all been covered up. The Foreign Office told people not to talk to me. The Yorks themselves forbade people from talking to me. I'd hoped that at least they would have some of their friends talk to me and help shape the narrative in a quite a positive way for them.
I mean, you use the word cover up, and cover up is always a strong word. What do you mean by it? Why? How can you justify that suggestion?
Well, because I think in my experience the last 4 years with the information rights departments of both the Foreign Office and Business and Trade, is they've led me a merry dance. So I'll ask for files, and they'll say there's so much there that the cost compliance thing comes into it. So you need to narrow it. When I narrow it, they say we've got nothing. Or it's health and safety, or it's personal data. I mean, they use or national security, or whatever. Then I come back and I ask another question, and they'll say, you're just being vexatious. You've asked 2 questions in the last 3 months, and that's not allowed. So, every excuse is used not to provide this material, when actually under FOI rules, they should be giving me some assistance to help me focus what I need to uncover.
So what I want to understand in that is that you talk about, you've been trying to uncover this in the past 4 years. Those are 4 years since Andrew has stepped back from royal duties. Are you saying that they're still protecting him?
Yes. For example, the Department of Trade internal computer has been wiped of all references to him. And I think this is what Andrew realised, that he was protected. I mean, first of all, he had the protection of the Queen. Anytime anyone raised any objections about either his financial dealings or basically what a mess he was making of being special representative, she gave them a curt sort of acknowledgement, and that was it. I had the head of the Foreign Office say that they put in representations and they were ignored. And Chris Bryant is on the record, a Labour minister, who put in complaints to Number 10, and they just sort of shrugged their shoulders. I've got intelligence officials reporting quite serious criminal acts, being told, forget it, there's no point in pursuing this. So yes, and Andrew just could operate with impunity, knowing that nothing would happen. And part of that is the deference that we still show to the royal family. There's no parliamentary scrutiny in terms of asking questions. There's no, they're not part of the Freedom of Information Act. Ambassadors clearly feel that they are Her Majesty's ambassador, and they therefore can't speak out of turn about what they've done. And pressure was put on people. So, for example, ambassadors who did say that there had been problems found that their careers were curtailed. I talked to a protection officer and said, "Why didn't you report this?" And he said, "I was told if you did so, you had a choice. You have a nice job with first-class travel, or you can go back on the beat in Brixton." And so this pressure was put on lots and lots of people. And we have, of course, the famous case of Amy Robach at ABC Television, who had the story, had interviewed Virginia Giuffre, and the palace heard about it, and they threatened ABC with basically withholding access to any member of the royal family for interviews, and ABC backed off. One of the interesting things is now the book is out, members of the media are saying, we knew a lot of this stuff, but we didn't feel we could report it. So I hope it may allow things to be slightly more transparent about what has happened.
Why? Why do you think it is that even though, the disgrace came most notably when my newsagent colleague Emily Maitlis did the interview with Prince Andrew, why the need to still protect him? Surely the smart thing to do if you're the royal family would be to absolutely hang him out to dry and say he was a wrong one from the start. But they're not doing that. They've said you've got to stand back from royal duties.
Yep.
But institutionally, they're still, as your book argues, are still protecting him.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways they need to cut off this infected limb, otherwise it'll infect the body politic. And King Charles knew about his brother. I mean, he was one of the people who argued against him being appointed a special trade representative. He knew it was going to be a disaster. So I think the feeling is that, this is just a summer thing. It'll pass over. So what? We've been here before. But I agree. I think they need to take this seriously because it undermines the good work that the rest of the family do. And I speak as a monarchist, slightly disappointed one sometimes, because, I think monarchy is our best form. It is the best system. Most of them do a great job. And it's only people like the Yorks who really let the side down, because people clearly get very upset by royals using their status to enrich themselves personally.
So obviously, Prince Andrew stood back, not because of financial misdoings. It was his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and we'll come to that in a minute. What was, in your mind, the most egregious example of his behaviour when he was our foreign trade representative?
Well, I think, there were so many, but I think it was just he was so brazen that he would actually put in requests to ambassadors to shoehorn in meetings for his buddies, for them to do business as opposed to promote British trade. Another moment is in a famous High Court trial in 2022 when a Turkish millionairess sued a man called Selman Turk, who had won Pitch at the Palace, which was a charity that Andrew ran, on the grounds that she'd paid £750,000 to Andrew to help her get a passport. Now, that actually wasn't true. But Andrew couldn't explain what he'd been paid £750,000 for. And Sarah Ferguson had got £250,000, ostensibly as a brand ambassador for a solar energy company, but couldn't really explain that either. It was all connected with a man called Taruk Khatuni, who had been giving jewellery to their daughter and was a Libyan gun runner. And then the daughter was paid £25,000 in her bank account from someone she'd never heard of, for either a birthday party months ahead or for a wedding which had 22 people. And no one could explain what these payments were for.
OK, we're going to come back to the legality in a minute, because I think it's such an interesting area of how you write a book like this and get it past the lawyers, frankly. But we'll come to that in a second. I want to pick up, though, on the Epstein relationship, which is obviously the critical moment when everything went sour for Prince Andrew. You don't believe that Epstein committed suicide. I read your passage on it, and you say the anomalies, the discrepancies, the injuries were just not consistent with suicide?
Yes, I mean, I think that there's several arguments. One is, why was his cellmate moved out when he was on suicide watch just beforehand? Why were the cameras not working? Why were two prison guards suddenly falling asleep for 3 hours at the same time and didn't mount checks? Michael Baden, who was the New York coroner, did an autopsy for the brother, Mark Epstein, because the autopsy findings had not been made public. And his findings were that these were signs of homicide rather than of suicide. There was another prisoner who was interviewed and said it's almost impossible to commit suicide. I mean, they just make it impossible for you. And I think the other factor is that Spencer Cooven, who was one of the lawyers for the victims, said that Epstein was in prison. It was the early stage of the whole process. He'd always got away with things. He had good lawyers. He was feeling very optimistic. So there was no reason for him to commit suicide. And we do have the extraordinary picture of the man in the orange jumpsuit the night before he died. We have the cutting of the government showing a film, which then has a minute taken out of it. So why would you cover up something if it was all perfectly innocent? So I think I leave it open for the reader to decide. But lots of people who know or who are in the know certainly don't believe that this was a suicide.
I mean, this now has an impact. I suspect your copy deadline, when your publisher said, right, enough, Andrew, stop, we've got to get this book published. Since then, we've had the Epstein affair blow up and start hitting Donald Trump as well. And there's some pretty big questions for him in all of this as well, in terms of his relationship with Epstein.
Absolutely. I mean, I quote testimony of the two of them being good friends, doing business together. So, they were very close. So I think I say something like they were best friends for years.
Well, you also talk about the relationship of Epstein and Prince Andrew, and you say it went on for longer than had previously been acknowledged. Is that right?
Yes, Andrew says the relationship began in 1999. Well, his own private secretary, Alistair Watson, wrote a letter to the Times saying it began in the early 90s. And Steve Hoffenberg, who was a business associate of Epstein, who actually went to prison for 18 years, having been involved in a Ponzi scheme with Epstein, where he took the fall. He said they met in 1991. So, I think also they were seeing each other after 2010, when Andrew ostensibly had cut off contact. And we know this from legal depositions in, for example, the Jess Slaley case.
So what he said to Emily in that Newsnight interview, I mean, it was devastating for Prince Andrew, but it wasn't the whole truth.
No, of course not. I mean, and many people have exposed that. I mean, she did it in her own interview, and it's been exposed since. His ability to sweat, why he went there, the fact he'd never seen Virginia Jeffrey. I mean, we have, I quote, correspondence, emails showing the Jeffrey being discussed by Ghislaine Maxwell and Andrew and how they're going to deal with it.
You talk about Epstein saying that Trump was a close friend. You've also got a quote from Epstein about his close relationship with Prince Andrew, which I want to read. "We are very similar. We are both serial sex addicts. He's the only person I have met who is more obsessed with pussy than me. We've shared the same women. From the reports I've got back from them, he's the most perverted animal in the bedroom. He likes to engage in stuff that's even kinky to me, and I'm the king of kink." What the hell does that mean?
Well, I think they were sort of partners, brought together by their love of women and money. And one of the interesting things in a biography is you can chart sort of the journey of the person, and clearly there are signs in Andrew's early life that he was sexualized very early, and his inability to sustain relationships with women, shows in many ways he was very similar to Epstein. Epstein needed 3 women a day, or sexual activity 3 times a day, and Andrew seems to be a little bit the same. So you can see that they had this mutual respect. I have a story in the book about Andrew on one of these official missions to Thailand to celebrate the anniversary of the King of Thailand, in which he has 40 escorts brought to him in the course of 4 days. And this is a story from a named source, Andrew McGregor Marshall, the Reuters correspondent out there. It's confirmed by Ian Proud, a diplomat who served in the embassy, and indeed a further confirmation from a member of the Thai aristocracy who was aware, whose driver got very friendly with Andrew's driver. And this material was coming to Andrew Marshall McGregor from hotel staff that he used to socialise with in the evening.
And the other story is Epstein sold stories about Andrew to intelligence services, to the Israelis, to the Saudis, to whoever. Really?
Well, it sounds incredible. It again comes from a good source. We have Tim Riley, who worked for Kroll, talking about compromat on Andrew in Russia. I talked to a Kazakhstan businessman who said it was standard procedure for anyone who was caught in these honey traps with these girls provided, that would be filmed and it would be used against them. There's a lot of material that was taken out on Libya, but again, there's material there. And it does seem strange, but we know that there are honey traps. Any businessman who goes off in the old days to Russia or whatever would be filmed. And Andrew is pretty naive about this. I mean, there's a story in the book of him going to South Africa, or indeed his private secretary, asking the consul if they would provide women for him. He said they like blondes. So he kind of was opening himself up to people taking advantage of him. And we do know from other books, I mean, not my research, that Epstein was trading information with people. He had close connections with intelligence services. We know from Mark Dugan, the Palm Beach policeman who eventually ended up in Moscow, that there were tapes, there were film, and that this may well have been passed to Putin. So Andrew may well be there, we just don't know. And Juliet Bryant, who's one of Epstein's victims, has gone on the record saying she went into one of the rooms at the house and saw the recording material there. So there's quite a lot of evidence, and it doesn't seem to be surprising that that's exactly how Epstein operated. I mean, one of the reasons that he went in December 2010, according to one of the people I talked to, was partly to get some more money for Fergie. I mean, not so much to break off with him, but also to get reassurances from Epstein that he didn't have any compromising material on him. Presumably he'd put two and two together. So it does sound extraordinary, but, there are stranger things happened. Time and time again, when I did the book on Mountbatten and said that, I'd found evidence that he had been molesting young boys, everyone said I'd made it up, even when I produced FBI files. And what the two people I'd interviewed were making it up. And now we've had other people come forward. Arthur Smith has just now appeared and making a case in Belfast. So quite often you put the stuff out and that then brings other people forward. But, of course, one could cut all sorts of things out of these books. But then, one wouldn't take the story forward. One would just be censoring oneself. Because, as you know as a journalist, you can't always stand everything up. It's particularly with royal books. It's really difficult. There are 3 pages of acknowledgements. There are a lot of people who have gone on the record. And I'm hoping that people will trust me. The lawyers saw all the statements from people. I had to get them signed off. So it's not as if I've made this stuff up. And clearly I had to, in the course of the legal read, go back and provide often further evidence to make them feel comfortable.
So let's talk about how on earth this book got legaled. Because, okay, you've got sources like that. You've made the allegation about Andrew. He lost his virginity aged 11. Honestly, I read the book and I thought that some of the financial reporting was kind of so forensic and detailed. And then the other stuff, I thought, wow, how has the lawyer allowed that to get through? Did you take the view in writing this book, or did your lawyers take the view, he's never going to sue, he's got too much to lose, we can print what we want?
Well, I took the view that I should put everything in and then the lawyers could take it out. And of course, there's certain things that do sound extraordinary and you don't want to undermine the stuff which does add up, like the financial stuff with the sexual stuff. And, one could be accused of it being salacious, but it seemed to me that it was quite important to try and understand his behaviour, which, there's no doubt about his sexual activities. The lawyers let it through.
Salacious to the point of, prurient detail at time. I kind of, there were bits where I thought, oh God, I don't want to know that. I mean, the soiled tissues left on by the side of the bed, which kind of domestic staff had to clear up for him.
Well, that comes actually from a memoir by the housekeeper at Highgrove, Wendy Berry. I mean, clearly, not all this stuff is direct testimony to me, and I source everything. So there are some stuff from newspaper accounts, some stuff personal memoirs like Wendy Berry's. And you have to trust these things, and they've clearly gone through before, and there's not been a problem. So I can only surmise that the lawyers felt that this stuff had appeared, and it had been okay.
So the story is in the book that maybe Andrew has slept with 1,000 women. Prince Andrew is such a public figure who has faced disgrace. Isn't it astonishing that more haven't come forward and thinking, I can earn a couple of grand from a red top tabloid by selling my story? If it was 1,000 women, you'd have thought there would be quite a few that would think there's a payday there to be had.
Absolutely. I mean, the quote comes from The Sun, from Phil Dampier and others. And as you say, what evidence can one provide? I certainly found quite a lot of girlfriends. I didn't put them all in. There are privacy issues and all sorts of things. So, certainly I was picking up a lot of this stuff. I think there is this omerta around the royal family. I think people are pretty discreet and loyal. But, there are girlfriends who've come forward. Denise Martel did a sort of kiss and tell story about a sort of two-night stand in LA.
You say there are privacy issues. What about his privacy? I mean, if he's having consensual relations with a whole bunch of women, whatever, or even paying for it. I mean, it's none of our bloody business, is it?
Absolutely, and a lot of that stuff didn't go in. I felt, for example...
10 women a day in Thailand went in.
Well, that was on a taxpayer-funded trip. I think that there is a public interest there to know what he was doing. Didn't really bring the country into great repute by doing that. I think sometimes it is a difficult balance, and my view is sometimes you have to put the stuff in because why should you self-censor yourself?
I suppose I would answer that as a journalist. If I'm not convinced it's true, the old line in journalism, it's a story that's too good to check. You love the idea of it, so let's not bother checking it. Let's just put it in anyway.
Well, it's very difficult to check 1,000 women. You're absolutely right. I think that's
What about the fight you cite that took place between, and it's a very colourful description of Andrew saying to Prince Harry, your marriage isn't going to last a month. She's too old for you. She's on the make. You're making a huge mistake, mate. And apparently Harry then clobbers him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my source was someone who works for Andrew. I mean, he's proved reliable and everything else. I doubled down on it after Harry popped up.
Harry's denied it, hasn't he?
He has denied it, and recollections can vary, of course. But it doesn't mean that because he's denied it, it isn't true. This could be just an attempt to, protect the honour of his wife. It's not damaging to him. But I did go back. I mean, there are two episodes which have got conflated. There was an episode in 2013 with the bloody nose, and that is about actually Andrew saying, you need to get your life in order. You're sort of on the skids. And then there's the episode in 2017 about Meghan Markle when he'd met her and he says, have you done your due diligence? Now, that's exactly what Prince William, for example, said to him. It's what I was picking up when I was researching my book on the Mountbattens in 2017, that the people there were raising the same concerns. So, I mean, sometimes you have to go a little bit with instinct. You're not going to get affidavits from people for these sort of books. But my source was, I think, trustworthy. We went back and they doubled down on it. It's Harry's word against this source.
Have you had any reaction from Andrew and Fergie? Have you had any injunctions? I mean, you talk about affidavits. It's hard to get affidavits. Understand that. But it's very easy if people want to block something to issue injunctions and whatever else and say, this is libelous, this is defamatory, you cannot say this.
Well, so far we've had nothing. There were legal letters to Collins from Sarah Ferguson's lawyers before the book came out. But I put my reputation on the line with this book. I mean, I'm a serious historian. I've done serious books. But I did feel, and clearly I don't want to overshadow the financial aspect with the sexual aspect, but it just seemed to me part of the whole story. to try and understand it.
Let me ask you a blunt question. Did you think that putting in all the sex stories would help the book sell better?
I didn't really think of all that, to be honest. I just sort of put it all in. I mean, as I gathered it, I stuck it in. I was interested in things, and I kind of assumed that if there were problems, either the editor would say this is a little over the top, or the lawyers would say you can't say this. But I was given this information, and I didn't feel that there was any reason to cut it.
I saw you gave an interview to the Sunday Times. Apparently you played rugby against Andrew. You were public schools together in Scotland at the same sort of time. You're the same sort of age. We all gave him a kicking in the scrum because we all hated him.
Yes, it's a slight misquote. I wasn't in the scrum with him, but I know other people did, yeah.
So it's not a hatchet job. I mean, this book is... Given what you say about him, it's devastating. If you have any views of Andrew after the whole Virginia Giuffre stuff and the Epstein relationship and his appalling interview with Emily on Newsnight, this book is 100 times worse than you imagined, I think.
Yeah, no, I went with a completely open mind, which is why I wanted to cooperate with them. I wanted to give them a chance to put their side of the story, for it to be as fair and balanced as it could. And I have, there is some stuff there showing, for example, that he could be very useful in the Middle East, that, she was very good with her charitable work, that she's, got lots of friends and is, in some ways, a very charming, charismatic person. So certainly it had no sense of going after him. I mean, my background is writing literary biography and intelligence biography. I moved into royal books because of doing a book on Burgess, which led me to Mountbatten, and from there to Trader King. And I will probably do a completely different sort of book next time. I'm not in... People say I'm obsessed with the royals. I'm a biographer who is trying to tell the truth when I write these books. And maybe I've gone too far for some people. But, I think if you're going to write the story, then you should try and do it as completely as you can.
Where is Andrew now? What is he doing?
Well, as far as I understand, he's in Royal Lodge. He's a man of 65. He's like...
Royal Lodge is the vast, sprawling estate in Windsor Great Park that Charles has tried to kick him out of, and it's now sort of in some state of disrepair, and Andrew hasn't got much money coming in, or so we think.
Well, that's a public story. I think he does have money, so I'm surprised that he isn't keeping it up. He has a lease, and I think it would be very difficult to push him out. And though the optics may not look good, and Charles may have plans for other people there, Andrew is entirely entitled to stay there. But in answer to your initial question, I think we see him going out on rides. He plays golf. He goes on shooting weekends. He entertains people at Sandringham. He watches videos. He reads a bit. I'm sure he's still doing business. There's less scrutiny on him in terms of that. So, it's not that different from most 65-year-olds who've given up work.
But he's pretty friendless, isn't he?
Well, I think he's been friendless most of his life. It's one of the sort of sad elements to it. I describe it as a sort of tragic comedy in some ways. And partly that's because he has been segregated. So, for example, he was in a separate house when he was at Gordonston. He was in a different block when he was on naval bases. He felt betrayed by people who'd betrayed his trust, so he didn't get close to people when he was a young boy. But I think also just by nature of his character, he doesn't necessarily draw people to him. And he's admitted he's a loner. He talks about his love of photography and he's taking these pictures of rather desolate landscapes. So there's something there. He wasn't well treated, for example, in his marriage. There are moments where you do feel sorry for him. He clearly rose to the occasion during the Falklands. No one can take away what he did there. And I talked to lots of people who serve with him there to try and get as accurate a picture as possible. So what I've tried to do is be as complete as possible, and maybe in some areas I've gone further than people would want. But I've tried to be as accurate as I could and as complete as I could. And sometimes that led one down areas which, as you say, are not particularly redeeming.
Tragic comedy is kind of the description, isn't it? Because there are times when you read it and think it is laughable, risible, how much he and she misjudge, people, situations, behaviour, and get it all so appallingly wrong and tragic, because you think, why are you such a rude, boorish man who behaves so badly and has screwed it all up?
Yeah, it is a sad story. And I mean, one wonders if he'd married Koo Stark, there would be a different story there. I mean, part of his problems have been trying to support a wife who's extremely extravagant. And that partly drew him into the Epstein net. You know, Epstein was picking up a lot of the bills. But, you know, and there were moments, even in his naval career, there's a moment when Tony Hogg, his naval mentor, says, look, you know, I can help shape things and make things work for you if you really want to get behind this. And things do work for a time, but he's quite lazy. And I think the problem is that he was spoiled as a child. I mean, everyone says that, including the Queen herself. And without boundaries, without being able to basically get away with things, it's got worse and worse. You know, one of the things I struggled with was to find people who could say positive things about him. You know, I was keen to have that because clearly one doesn't want to read a book which is unremittingly hostile. You know, people are complex and it is nuanced. But I struggled. Much easier with Sarah Ferguson because there are a lot of things there. She's a good friend to people. She's got a kind heart. She has a terrific empathy for the disadvantaged. I mean, there's scenes there, and I quite a lot of people, where she goes into very difficult charitable situations and turns things round. I mean, there's a lot to admire, and that's, I say, part of the tragedy, that if there had been more support, perhaps, and perhaps people around them directing both of them, they wouldn't have got themselves in this mess.
Andrew Lownie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
As you can imagine, we've reached out to Prince Andrew, Buckingham Palace and the government about some of the claims in the interview. The Department for Trade told us the department has complied with its obligations under the Freedom of Information Act and Public Records Act. We've yet to hear back from the Palace or Prince Andrew. And a statement issued by Prince Harry's office denies any physical altercation between himself and Andrew. The statement says, I can confirm Prince Harry and Prince Andrew have never had a physical fight, nor did Prince Andrew ever make the comments he's alleged to have made about the Duchess of Sussex to Prince Harry. And the £750,000 payment to Prince Andrew that Andrew Lownie referred to in that interview was later repaid.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.